game has experimented with different sports supplements. I guess what, psychologically, what's your draw to them, or has been your draw in the past? What did you hope to derive from the use of them?
It actually drives me crazy. That industry has a big effect on me, probably mostly negative, especially when you see bodybuilders or Instagram fitness professionals using so much stuff. Now, granted, they could be sponsored, but, so I guess what messes with my mind is that there's this magic combination of supplements or powders that would consistently improve my performance, or take what otherwise might be a low energy workout and just make it dialed in like every day. And we often talk about, like, don't go crazy to add a bunch of stuff that creates a 2%, performance increase. But I guess in my mind, like, oh, is the stuff they're using, would that give me a 10% increase? And then the market is so saturated with products. There's so many voices, there's so many barkers. I wouldn't even know where to start, even if some of them did magically work that well.
Yeah, I think that, there's an inclination for us to seek the easiest or most efficient way to achieve a result. And the companies know this, and they use that as a marketing technique, as well as fear, shame, some really base emotions that they play on. We'll definitely talk about that for sure. But I think my experience has been similar too. I saw, X person promoting the product, thought like, if I use this, I will look like them. And that's obviously not true, but we can break that down a little bit more. So I think we need to define what a supplement is in the context of this conversation. So supplement, means to add. It's an additive, not a basis for a healthy diet or nutrition program. So to supplement, something needs to add to it, and that's how supplements should be looked at. In my experience, in my opinion, with clients, they should form about 5% of your nutritional strategy, as opposed to sort of some people, they're like, covering up a lot of lack of sleep, lack of training consistency, and lack of nutrition consistency underneath. And the use of them should be predicated upon having that solid base of sleep, training, and nutrition already in place before you reach for them, because they're adding to an already balanced diet in there. So sports supplements are considered things that would be food additives and are approved by the FDA. Now, are you familiar with the one requirement for supplements from the FDA?
I'm not, but I'm sure it's probably minimal.
Yes, it's you just can't kill people from taking it. So that's the one main requirement that's provided with them. So they don't even have to be efficacious. So if they say they're going to make you gain 10 pounds of muscle, they just have to not kill you, and then they can be sold with that label. So that's one of the issues with the industry as a whole. So I guess the main point here is that we don't want to reach for supplements until we've already made sure that our diet's locked in, we're sleeping adequately 7 to 9 hours per night, and that we're also training consistently as well to take advantage of them as we go through. Now, there's different categories of supplements that we'll look at. Some are just daily, whether you're into the fitness world or you're just trying to be a generally healthy human. And then those that will be more sports supplements or performance seeking as well. So Jeremiah, do you take a multivitamin or anything like that on a daily basis?
Yes. Just a normal off-the-shelf, like Costco brand men's multivitamin.
Sure, which is great. And, vitamins are important because they contain what are called micronutrients as opposed to the macronutrients of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And the reason that these are important is if we're not eating a very balanced diet at all times of the year, we may be deficient in some things like vitamin D3 labeled below. Even with adequate sunshine, some people do not produce enough naturally, so they're going to be deficient. So getting a good multivitamin is important. You want to make sure that the quality is there, and you can read the nutrition label to make sure that it has all the different vitamins that are usually found in them. Now, one thing to point out is this idea of bioavailability. Now, are you familiar with this term?
I guess, like, how much of the mineral or supplement our body can actually absorb and use.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great definition. So this is important because sometimes you'll see supplements that'll say like 100% or 120% of your daily value, but you may actually only be absorbing 5%. So it's not very bioavailable, right? This is the issue with plant-based proteins and certain things like that. The protein might not be as bioavailable as it is in other areas. So it's important to make sure that we're considering that as well, the bioavailability within certain supplements. And there's ways to look that up, which we'll go over as we go through there. Another one that I recommend for all people, regardless of how active you are, is a omega-3 supplement, because we tend to eat, us Americans, a diet that's higher in omega-6 fats, which can be pro-inflammatory. So making sure you're balancing that out with maybe a tablespoon of flax or fish oil, preferably, unless you're vegan, which in case you can have flax oil as a omega-3 source. Do you take omega-3?
Yes, you got me. I dabbled when I was younger, but you got me into the flavored Barlean's liquid. So serving of that a day, usually in like my post-workout shake, and that's been great because it tastes good. It doesn't taste fishy usually.
Yes, yeah, I found that one to be great, and I know that the quality is high. Usually with those, you want to be careful about some of the products that aren't refrigerated. The fat can actually go rancid in the capsule, so that's why I prefer the refrigerated type. So most people, regardless of sort of what your your activity level is or your athletic goals, these are 3 things that I would recommend. As with anything, you want to check with a doctor before you start taking any type of supplement, because it may interact with medication or anything else that you're taking. But provided you clear these with a physician, these are a general basis for most people. Now, for people that are trying to lose fat, you'll notice that there's really not too much on this list. And what is one thing that's missing from here completely?
With like a fat burner supplement, that's a huge market, by the way.
100%. And I guess just to play this out, like, why do you think there's such a huge market for it?
I mean, that is some old selling snake oil in the 1800s. People want to lose fat. They want a shortcut. They want it easy. I mean, that should be the goal of science, right? A pill in which it either actively and healthily made you lose weight or prevented you from gaining weight. I mean, it's the dream.
Yeah, 100%. And the reason that they're not on this list is that they don't really work, right? And as you know, from all the effort and work that you put in, there is a lot of work involved in losing body fat. It takes a change in behavior. It takes consistency over time. And the ability to try and market that as a pill is very, very appealing to a lot of people, because that work can be intimidating to do. But studies bear out that, it doesn't really matter how many fat burners you take, and especially you shouldn't take a lot, because there's a lot of caffeine that can jack up your heart. Really, it's going to come down to that diet part. Now, there are a few ingredients in those that may help suppress appetite, and one of them is caffeine, and that can help suppress appetite temporarily. But that temporary suppression means that after the caffeine wears off, it's going to come back. So there's really no catch-all supplement for fat loss. I do put protein powders here because we know that eating a diet in moderate to high in protein does keep people more full, which can lead them to adhere more to their dietary strategy as they go through. So caffeine, something you want to use in moderation, not necessarily for fat loss. We'll talk about it for performance, but the protein powders are more just a food supplement as well. Have you heard of any specific issues with fat burners or anything like that before?
I mean, I've had, heard bad stories. Even when I first moved to LA about 20 years ago, too, fat burners had fen-phen in them. Just like, like a pretty hardcore drug that is now banned over the counter,
Sure.
Basically a strong amphetamine. So,
Yes.
And if I try to take them like racing heartbeat, I'll say this, they never made me feel good. They felt unhealthy. If someone else has a different opinion, respect. But it felt unnatural, especially like thermogenic stuff where you feel your body heating up. And that's like, wait, just because I'm hotter, okay, like, I understand there could be a correlation, but I don't think being hotter all day is going to make me burn 5 pounds of fat.
No, not necessarily. And I think you have to look at the net health benefit, and it's in the negative on these overall, especially if they're combined with some type of starvation diet, things like that. They can interrupt sleep patterns. So as with most things, a more moderate and longer track approach is actually going to lead to better results. And we know that with these. Now, we get into the good part, and what you're looking down at right now, muscle gain. So there's a variety of supplements that are out there. And the way that we analyze sort of what is a good versus bad supplement is how effective it is. And the way that we know how effective it is if it's been studied in a placebo-controlled double-blind study, which is the standard, right? Where you would take 2 groups of people, one group that you give the supplement to, one group that you do not, but you do not tell each group if they've had the supplement or not. you have them perform a training program, and you measure muscle biopsy and certain other factors at the beginning and the end, and then you would have an understanding. So we know, in utero studies where we look at how the supplement may affect the cell, and then on the opposite side, the more performance-based studies where we have, or the in vitro versus in utero studies where we look what it does in isolation versus how it performs in the field. And these particular, supplements or protein powders and things like that, they actually have some evidence behind them. So protein powders are looped in with supplements, but it's really just food in a different form, right? It's, no different than eating a piece of meat or something like that. One thing that I will say with protein powders is you want to make sure that they have essential amino acids in them. Animal-based proteins tend to carry all 9 essential amino acids. Plant-based may not, so you want to be aware of that. The other thing you want to look for is the amount of ingredients. The fewer, the better. So you want to avoid binders and things like that may upset your stomach. And then essentially in terms of marketed protein, there's casein, and then there's whey or whey isolate proteins. Casein just be a slower digesting. So the simplest way to think about it is a whey isolate pre and post workout or throughout the day, and then a casein protein powder maybe during the night because it takes a little bit longer to digest and break down. Have you taken casein protein powder before?
Yeah, I think I keep a mixed one in my office, Biofarm or something in a green container. And I think that's a mix of whey casein. I've never done like an all casein, if that's a thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's different products out there, but it feels like a little bit thicker when you mix it and things like that, but it will digest slower. Another supplement that has a ton of studies behind it is creatine, and I think it's vastly misunderstood. Some people even think it's a steroid, things like that. The way that creatine works is our body naturally produces creatine. We're actually able to get it from meat products and things like that when we eat them. And what it allows for your body to do is actually to work a little bit harder while you're training. So in the actual process of firing the muscle, it allows for, like, let's call it an additional stroke just for the visual. And what that allows for, harder training or more ability to do repetitions creates more muscle damage, which in turn with proper nutrition and sleep will create more muscle mass. So it allows you to flip the on switch or the anabolic on switch a little harder when you're training as opposed to putting any actual muscle on you. There's a slight water retention factor that some people kind of point to as well, but mainly it's just improving your training efficiency so that you can get a little bit more out of each training session. So maybe once your body is saturated with creatine, you can do 11 reps instead of 10 or 12 reps instead of 10, therefore creating more intramuscular damage and then more recovery and growth over time. So have you taken creatine before?
Yeah, a long time ago, and I've definitely known a lot of people that swear by it. You also hear a lot of people say it just creates like water muscle, like there's that, and then like the second you stop taking it, your watery muscles shrink back down. But I haven't tried it probably in like 15 or 20 years, so it's everywhere though. You see it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and look, it's very cheap and it's really easy to produce. So it works. We know that it does. So it's worth an investment if you're going into a muscle gain phase, and just acknowledging there may be up to a 3% gain of intramuscular water retention and things like that. But there is real muscle gain over a prolonged period of time. And we've seen that with tons of studies. So highly studied, highly effective, considerably, but we're talking about a few percentage points, right? As opposed to the 95% that comes from balanced diet, exercise, and recovery. So another one that's comparable to the protein powders would be high carbohydrate drinks. Either intra, meaning during workouts, or post-workout. So things that have dextrose or waxy maize starch, fast absorbing carbohydrates. A lot of marathon runners and endurance athletes will use these so they don't bonk. But sometimes too, bodybuilders and powerlifters in long 2-hour sessions that are very glucose sensitive will take them in as well. But again, this is more just another form of food as opposed to any type of supplement. But it works really well. It raises the blood glucose level. And then our fourth one here is weight gain supplements. So have you ever taken like a mass gainer or anything like that?
I've never needed to, because like I'm on the other side of the equation where it's very easy for my body to like gain weight. But
Sure.
I have noticed this part of like the industry. Like people really need to take on maybe a couple thousand extra calories a day, like to gain.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's essentially a way to sneak calories into your body. There's a ton of different stuff in there. One serving could be like 800 calories, which is essentially a meal. They're, they are what they are. Their idea is just to pump your body full of calories. There can be some digestion issues associated. And with all these products, again, like making sure that you consult the physician is important. And then also making sure that like paying attention to the ingredients. We always want to monitor exactly what we're putting in our bodies. So knowing what each of those ingredients are, if we have any type of allergic reaction or any intolerance to them, especially like whey, things like that, that people may have a dairy intolerance and can cause issues with them as well. So I know this isn't necessarily you, but people that are eating a plant-based diet and maybe avoiding some of the fats and proteins and some of the other micronutrients that come with animal products. Vitamin B12 is very important. Sticking to plant-based protein powders, because protein can be an issue when you're eating a lot of plant-based foods, as well as getting omega-3s, as we discussed before. And then making sure, getting your blood tested, making sure that your micronutrient levels are good, your mineral levels are good, because you're missing an entire part of the wide array of food spectrum. It's not to make any value judgment on someone's ethical food choices, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're getting in a balance of the nutrients that can optimize us as we go through for there. So things that we haven't hit on that consume about 90% of the marketing spend in on Instagram and bodybuilding magazines and things like that. Pre-workouts, tea boosters, fat loss pills, branched chain amino acids, fit teas, cleanses or detox, or anything with the word proprietary blend. So here's a good opportunity to talk about the industry at large, right? So the supplement industry, what does it exist for? What's its purpose, Jeremiah?
It's to make money by selling products that people believe will get them in the shape they want by just taking the product. I mean, sometimes it's that bad.
Yeah, the annual revenue of the supplement industry is about 3 to 4 times that of the health club industry.
Oh, so, sure.
Yeah.
These are everywhere.
100%. And I think it shows you the power of marketing and the human, inclination to seek the easy way out. Pre-workout supplements, as you mentioned before, essentially they boil down to a lot of caffeine. They're stimulants. They can contain some other things like beta-alanine and some other beta-alanine being a vasodilator that increases blood flow, which can be, slightly helpful, but then there's usually a lot of junk in them as well. And the caffeine content is alarming, sometimes 400 milligrams per serving. To give you an idea, a cup of coffee from Starbucks is about 200 milligrams, and that's your recommended daily intake. And some people are having upwards of 600-700 a day, causing sleep issues, heart palpitations, things like that. So definitely something to avoid. Stick to coffee like you do, which I think is a great strategy. Testosterone boosters or T boosters, supplements that propose to increase testosterone, which we know to be an anabolic hormone or muscle building hormone. We know that the best testosterone boosters are sleep, balanced diet, and resistance training. Can't beat those, right? So anything off those shelves is not going to beat the good old school approach by any means. And is generally those are a more expensive class of supplements as well to be thrown away. We already talked about fat loss pills and powders. Let's talk about branched chain amino acids. Have you ever taken those before, or are you familiar?
Oh yeah, sure. I probably have an old. We'll go look on top of my refrigerator right now. I bet you anything there are old bucket of branched chain amino acid powder.
Absolutely. And we talked about bioavailability here, and that's really what the BCAA issue is. That you're wasting the vast majority of whatever's in that amino acid profile. And if you're eating enough protein already, or you're taking protein supplements, you're already getting those amino acids. There's no need to take them as well. The one exception would be in an extreme calorie deficit, because we don't want to cannibalize muscle, but you wouldn't want to take branched chain amino acids. You would want to take essential amino acids, or EAAs, because those are much more bioavailable. They're more expensive, but they actually do the job. So the value is there. But if you're eating enough protein in your diet, you're getting about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. You already have enough. So you're essentially just drinking expensive flavored water at the gym. So that's, I think that this myth these have become very popular. They're in vogue right now. So just to kind of dispel the need for them. Fit tea, I think, speaks for itself. If there was a tea that made you fit, I wouldn't exist. So
right.
The same for cleanses or detoxes. They essentially amount to a bunch of things like senna leaf or other laxatives and diuretics that are just going to flush a lot of water and solid waste through your body, which is generally pretty unhealthy and can be habit forming over the long term, which can cause a whole host of digestive issues. I guess in general, if people are looking towards supplements as a quick fix, the answer is a road to ruin and a lot of lost money. The sad answer is that there is not a quick fix, and that these will only be something that assists in a overall healthy approach. And the last point, I'm sure you've seen it in the back, if a company says that they have a proprietary blend attached to their supplement, that just means that they're full of it and they don't want to tell you what's in it.
Yep, which most do. I mean, GNC would close their doors if you took all this stuff out of the equation. So you could try.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there's a lot of predatory marketing that you alluded to, where people are shamed or, made hopeful about seeing someone that looked comparable to them achieving a result, and the marketing companies are disingenuous in their presentation. There's been some incidents where these bodybuilders were promoting testosterone products, and then we're on the other hand doing interviews where they're very much admitting to using anabolic steroids, right? Which completely okay within the context of their sport, but the magazine to a teenager or someone else that looks at it, the assumption is that products created that result, and therefore in any other industry that would be some very disingenuous advertising, but the supplement industry has an interesting standing where it can get away with that.
Yes,
as it goes through.
Testosterone boosters past 10 years, definitely a lot of, especially that product really like shames men on their performance or whatever it may be, to like, oh, is your testosterone low?
Yes. Yeah, and I would always caution people, and before you open your wallet and pay for something, do the things that are in your power for free, right? Are you getting enough sleep, right? Are you eating a balanced diet and tracking your food? Are you exercising, right? If you can do those consistently for 2 months, right? There's no way your life isn't going to change if you were going from baseline of 0, right? And at that point, do you really need to add in another 5% at the cost, right? If you're spending, say, going to a gym, spending even $100 a month on a membership, right? You're spending $400 a month on healthy groceries, right? And you're getting 95% of the way there. Why would you spend another $500 a month to get 5% more? It just doesn't make any sense. But I think people don't think through it that much. And also the hard work that, you've been through and you continue to do is daunting to people as well. As we go through.
It's that time shortcut. And I understand, the best intentions, but in real life, jobs and families and commutes. So, I mean, it'd be nice, Brave New World, if all this stuff worked, but unfortunately it doesn't. And
yeah, the only hacks that exist are having a lot of muscle mass does give you some wiggle room. The other hack that I would say exists for things like this is just a reorganization of your time, not necessarily not doing the work. So some people are forced to do like 2 20-minute workouts throughout the day because they're busy with their career, things like that. But at the end of the day, there's no substitute. And interesting aside, and another conversation for another time, there's a psychological and emotional benefit to exercise chemically. And what they've tried to do is actually replicate that with a pill, right? That elicits the dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin response. But what they found was long-term, essentially, like there's some type of persistence gene in the human body through evolution that we need to struggle and overcome things to feel whole, right? Because our ancestors obviously were those that persisted in the face of adversity. So the pill didn't have the same effect, right? Obviously not physiologically, but even psychologically as actually doing the physical work. Very interesting.
That is super interesting.
So there really is no magic pill.
They'll keep looking for that. Industry will keep marketing it though.
100%. Oh yeah, of course. And people will continue to buy after it. I've included in this, and I'll send you a copy of this, but these are my top picks for these particular categories of supplements. But again, most of these are just food in different forms. They're not even really supplements. Food in more convenient forms for people like you on the go that are busy and just want to keep it simple and efficient like that. But yeah, I'm not a big advocate of supplements for that reason, that there's just not a lot of efficacy to most of them as you go through.